We've been talking just now about Governor Perry's rhetoric, but let's talk about his record. Just this morning, your campaign put out a statement accusing him of pushing for bailout money, supporting welfare for illegal immigrants, and trying to forcibly vaccinate 12-year-old girls against sexually transmitted disease. He's your home state governor. Is he less conservative than meets the eye?
Much more so, yes. Just take the HPV. Forcing 12-year-old girls to take an inoculation to prevent this sexually transmitted disease. This is not good medicine, I do not believe. I think it's social misfit. It's not good social policy, and therefore I think this is very bad to do this. But one of the worst parts about that was the way it was done. You know, the governorship in Texas traditionally is supposed to be a weak governorship. I didn't even know they could pass laws by writing an executive order. He did it with an executive order, passed it. The state was furious, and the legislature overwhelmingly, probably 90%, I don't know exactly, overwhelmingly repealed this. But I think it's the way it was passed, which was so bad. I think it's a bad piece of legislation, but I don't like the idea of executive orders. I, as president, will not use the executive order to write laws.
Thank you, Congressman. Governor Perry will get to you, but Congresswoman Bachmann, this is an issue you've also talked about, HPV.
Well, what I'm very concerned about is the issue of parental rights. I think when it comes to dealing with children, it's the parents who need to make that decision. It is wrong for government, whether it's state or federal government, to impose on parents what they must do to inoculate their children. This is very serious, and I think that it's very important, again, that parents have that right. Education reform is another area. That's where I cut my teeth in politics, was being involved in education reform, because the problem you see is one of framing. The idea is, should the federal government control these areas, or should parents and localities control these areas? We have the best results when we have the private sector and when we have the family involved. We have the worst results when the federal government gets involved, and especially by dictate to impose something like an inoculation on an innocent 12-year-old girl. I would certainly oppose that.
Thank you. Governor Perry, we've had candidates talking about you.
Yes,
Let's hear from you.
I kind of feel like the piñata here at the party. So,
welcome.
But here's the facts of that issue. There was an opt-out in that piece of, it wasn't legislation, it was an executive order. I hate cancer. We passed a $3 billion cancer initiative that same legislative session, of which we're trying to find over the next 10 years cures to cancers. Cervical cancer is caused by HPV. We wanted to bring that to the attention of these thousands of tens of thousands of young people in our state. We allowed for an opt-out. I don't know what's more strong for parental rights than having that opt-out. There's a long list of diseases that cost our state and cost our country. It was on that list. Now, did we handle it right? Should we have talked to the legislature first before we did it? Probably so. But at the end of the day, I will always err on the side of saving lives.
Yes, sir. Senator Santorum, one final note on this book, Fed Up. Governor Perry says in his book that it was, quote, unprincipled for Republicans to vote in favor of creating the Department of Homeland Security. You were one of those Republicans who voted yes. Respond.
We created a Department of Homeland Security because there was a complete mess in the internal in protecting our country. We had all sorts of agencies that had conflicting authority. We had no information sharing that was going on. This was right after 9/11. We saw the problems created as a result of 9/11, and we put together a plan to try to make sure that there was better coordination. I want to get back to this Gardasil issue. You know, we have Governor Perry's out there and claiming about states' rights and states' rights. How about parental rights being more important than states' rights? How about having, instead of an opt-out, an opt-in? If you really cared, you could make the case, instead of forcing me as a parent, and I have 7 children too. The wide receivers here have on the ends here have 7 children each. But I am offended that the government would tell me, and by an executive order, without even going through the process of letting the people have any kind of input. I would expect this from President Obama. I would not expect this from someone who's calling himself a conservative governor.
Time. Governor Romney, you've been listening to this exchange. Who's got the better end of it?
You know, I believe in parental rights and parental responsibility for our kids. My guess is that Governor Perry would like to do it a different way. Second time through, we've each taken a mulligan or two, and my guess is that that's something you'd probably do a little differently. Second time, he just said he'd rather do it through legislation next time through, and I recognize he wanted very badly to provide better health care to his kids and to prevent the spread of cancer. I agree with those who said he went about it in the wrong way, but I think his heart was in the right place. Right now, we have people who on this stage care very deeply about this country. We love America. America's in crisis. We have some differences between us, but we agree that this president's got to go. This president's a nice guy. He doesn't have a clue how to get this country working again.
Governor Perry, as you well know, you signed an executive order requiring little girls, 11 and 12-year-old girls, to get a vaccine to deal with a sexually transmitted disease that could lead to cervical cancer. Was that a mistake?
It was, indeed. If I had it to do over again, I would have done it differently. I would have gone to the legislature, worked with them. But what was driving me was obviously making a difference about young people's lives. Cervical cancer is a horrible way to die. And I happen to think that what we were trying to do was to clearly send a message that we're going to give moms and dads the opportunity to make that decision with parental opt-out. Parental rights are very important in the state of Texas. We do it on a long list of vaccines that are made. But on that particular issue, I will tell you that I made a mistake by not going to the legislature first. Let me address Ron Paul just a minute by saying I will use an executive order to get rid of as much of Obamacare as I can on day one.
Congresswoman Bachmann, do you have a problem with anything that Governor Perry just said? You're a mom.
I'm a mom, and I'm a mom of 3 children. And to have innocent little 12-year-old girls be forced to have a government injection through an executive order is just flat out wrong. That should never be done. That's a violation of a liberty interest. That's little girls who have a negative reaction to this potentially dangerous drug don't get a mulligan. They don't get a do-over. The parents don't get a do-over. That's why I fought so hard in Washington, D.C. against President Obama and Obamacare. President Obama, in a stunning, shocking level of power now, just recently told all private insurance companies, you must offer the morning after abortion pill because I said so, and it must be free of charge. That same level coming through executive orders and through government dictates is wrong. And that's why, again, we have to have someone who's absolutely committed to the repeal of Obamacare, and I am. I won't rest until it's repealed.
Governor Perry respond. Was what you signed into law, that vaccine for 11 and 12-year-old girls, was that, as some of your critics have suggested, a mandate?
No, sir, it wasn't. It was very clear. It had an opt-out. And at the end of the day, this was about trying to stop a cancer and giving the parental option to opt out of that. And at the end of the day, you may criticize me about the way that I went about it, but at the end of the day, I am always going to err on the side of life. And that's what this was really all about for me.
Senator Santorum, go ahead.
Can I add to that, Wolf? Can I add to that?
Hold on a second. First Congresswoman Bachmann, then Senator Santorum.
I just wanted to add that we cannot forget that in the midst of this executive order, there was a big drug company that made millions of dollars because of this mandate. We can't deny that.
What are you suggesting?
What I'm saying is that it's wrong for a drug company because the governor's former chief of staff was the chief lobbyist for this drug company. The drug company gave thousands of dollars in political donations to the governor, and this is just flat out wrong. Right. The question is it about life or was it about millions of dollars and potentially billions for a drug company?
All right, I'll let Senator Santorum hold off for a second. You got to respond to that.
Yes, sir. The company was Merck, and it was a $5,000 contribution that I had received from them. I raised about $30 million. And if you're saying that I can be bought for $5,000, I'm offended.
I'm offended for all the little girls and the parents that didn't have a choice. That's what I'm offended for.
Yeah, I think we need to hear what Governor Perry's saying. He's saying that his policy was right. He believes that what he did was right. He thinks he went about it the wrong way. I believe your policy is wrong. Why, ladies and gentlemen, why do we inoculate people with vaccines at public schools? Because we're afraid of those diseases being communicable between people at school. And therefore, to protect the rest of the people at school, we have vaccinations to protect those children. Unless Texas has a very progressive way of communicating diseases in their school by way of their curriculum, then there is no government purpose served for having little girls inoculated at the force and compulsion of the government. This is big government run amok. It is bad policy, and it should not have been done.
I'm going to move on, Governor Perry, unless you want to say anything else.
Look, I think we've made decisions in Texas. We put a $3 billion effort in to find the cure for cancer. There are a lot of different cancers out there. Texas, I think, day in and day out, is a place that protects life. I've passed parental notification pieces of legislation. I've been the most pro-life governor in the state of Texas. And what we were all about was trying to save young people's lives in Texas.
Then give parents the opt-in as opposed to teach them, let them opt in, but do not force them to have this inoculation.
Congresswoman Bachmann, in the last debate, you criticized Governor Perry for his executive order mandating that 6th graders get the HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer. Then afterwards, you suggested that the vaccine was linked to mental retardation, and you said that it could, quote, potentially be a very dangerous drug. But the American Academy of Pediatrics has looked at it and says that the HPV vaccine has an excellent safety record. So my question to you is, do you stand by your statement that the HPV vaccine is potentially dangerous? And if not, should you be more careful when you're talking about a public health issue?
Well, first, I didn't make that claim, nor did I make that statement. Immediately after the debate, a mother came up to me, and she was visibly shaken and heartbroken because of what her daughter had gone through. And so I only related what her story was. But here's the real issue. Governor Perry mandated a health care decision on all 12-year-old little girls in the state of Texas. And by that mandate, those girls had to have a shot for a sexually transmitted disease. That is not appropriate to be a decision that a governor makes. It's appropriate that parents make that decision in consultation with their doctor. But here's the even more important point, because Governor Perry made a decision where he gave parental rights to a big drug company. That big drug company gave him campaign contributions and hired his former chief of staff to lobby him to benefit the big drug company. That's what was wrong with that picture.
Governor Perry, obviously 30 seconds to respond, sir.
Thank you. I got lobbied on this issue. I got lobbied by a 31-year-old young lady who had stage 4 cervical cancer. I spent a lot of time with her. She came by my office. She talked to me about this program. I've readily admitted that we should have had an opt-in in this program, but I don't know what part of opt-out most parents don't get. And the fact is, I erred on the side of life, and I will always err on the side of life as a governor and as the President of the United States.